So that's where it all started. I was modeling. I worked on Miami Vice, the movie, and I went on there and I became friends with all the crew, became friends with all the camera operators, and Michael Mann showed me his storyboards, and we talked. We had some really great conversations, and I learned a lot. And it was that moment at 18, 19 years old that I looked at a sea of 800 extras, and I watched Michael Mann just directing the whole scene. And it was so magical that I was like, I am really going to be a director.
Uncommon Creative, the FILMPAC podcast.
All right, guys, welcome to another podcast. And today, man, this is just a really special one. We have the, filmmaker, cinematographer, freelancer, director, influencer, Emily Skye, aka SheWolf. Thank you so much for coming and just hanging out and chatting.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, we should have a fun session. I got some pointed questions for you, and I think a lot of our listeners, they just want to hear probably a lot about your story and even some of maybe your gear preferences and technical things. We're going to ask a little bit about everything and hopefully bring a lot of value and entertainment and education and inspiration to our listeners. So first off, maybe just a little bit of a basic introduction, where you're at in life, family, geographical location, all that kind of thing.
Well, thanks for having me again.
Yeah.
I've been in the industry 17 years. I started as a music video director and DP, and really just wanted to get into narrative after I started working with Michael Mann in Miami. So I'm currently living in South Florida. I have a 10-year-old, almost 11-year-old. I really wanted to raise him around family because family is just really important to me. And I was raised with a really amazing close family, so I wanted Jace to have the same experience. So I chose to stay in South Florida, and I do come to California, so I consider myself bi-coastal. I used to come out monthly. I love it. I put my child first and foremost, and I just kind of maneuver around that. It's not easy being a mom and a woman in the filmmaking industry and living in South Florida at the same time. Yeah. So there's a lot of obstacles, but I think the beautiful thing is about social media. It connects you to people all over the world. And it's really given me a lot of opportunities to even just be here with you today, For
sure. And, I'm going to jump ahead for a second because, I want to ask you about the work-life balance and boundaries and family and all that. And it sounds like right off the bat, I can tell you're family first, career second. And part of that is, really, if you were career first, that's the only thing, you'd probably be living in Southern California. Am I wrong? Yeah. But you're choosing family. I mean, I love that.
I think what it is for me, I struggled a lot when I was younger. My son is going to be 11, so I was 26, 27 years old, and I was coming out to California, and I really had that just place in my heart and soul that I really wanted to be out here with all my friends and go just balls to the wall, let's do this, but I needed to, I really wanted to be there for my child and that he felt love and stable because I wanted him to grow up to be a stable human being. And I know my career is always there. And if I had to work extra hard to go after my dreams, it was easy for me to choose, to be mom. But I feel like every mom or every parent should still choose themselves as well in the process because you can get lost.
Yes, that's the difficult balance that I feel like
I've
had a hard time striking that balance.
Yeah.
But one thing, kind of in response to what you're saying is, I know I've told my wife this, hey, if what it takes for me to be close to my kids and you meant moving to Antarctica and working at a fast food joint, I would do that. I will, my career is, I'm passionate about it. I love it. I want to really excel in it, but it's so secondary to family. So it sounds like
it's important. It really is, because at the end of the day, who's going to be there for you? You're only as good as your last project. And you need to constantly be reinventing yourself and moving forward. I want to make sure that the humans I bring into this world are doing good things and are good people, So I needed to put myself in check. It's been hard. It's not easy. I make mistakes all the damn time, and trying to find that balance of how do I balance going after my career and making my son's baseball games and making sure that he gets into the schools that he needs to get into and does his homework and just does all these things, and then also be there for my family. So it's you're balancing all of this weight, and there's some days where I'm better at one thing than the other. It just kind of, it's like this seesaw that it's like going, and some days I feed one more than the other, and I just have to keep reevaluating myself and going forward. And it's not easy, but I honestly believe that, and I get a lot of different kind of responses. Some people are like, you should be just all about your kid and just be home and not be traveling. And you should, why can't you just be a stay-at-home, and do this? And it's like, if that's what you want to do, that's wonderful. But for me, and I know in my soul, I need to go after my dreams and I need to create. Because if I'm not creating, a part of me dies.
Yes.
And like being a mom is only one part of me. And it's like I have to feed those other parts of my soul to make sure that I'm also taken care of and that my mental health is like important.
Yeah.
So
I just want to say I respect that a lot. I respect you a lot. That's so cool that you're able to find that balance. I mean, for me, I feel like I have a very recent memory of this, meaning yesterday, as I'm prepping for this podcast or thinking about it, I had like 10 kids, my 2 kids, some neighbor kids, some friends all over my house, and they're wanting me to make them popcorn and pizza and play hide and seek with them. And I'm like, I know in my head I got to work, but I'm like, you know what? My kids, they just need me to be dad right now. Yeah. And I just got to put that all to the side, and work stuff will happen and that'll come Monday. That's great. But anyway, there's the big decisions, like you were saying, like where do you live and what specific career choice you're choosing to help, to support your family. And then there's just like the day-to-day, like hour to hour of like, oh, I got to detach from work now. I'm going home. My kids need me to be dad. Just got to be there for them.
When I moved my office from out of my house, it's actually made a huge it just helped so much.
Positive.
It was a positive influence on that, because I was editing all night, all day, and I was so absorbed. Even with my clients, they're like, oh, can you tweak this or tweak that? Now it's like, sorry, I'll be in the office tomorrow.
Yes.
I have to do that when I get to the office. I'm sorry. And they're like, oh, okay. And because I don't want people to be able to reach me as easily as I was allowing people to. And I think that really took a toll on me as well for a little bit, being too accessible.
Oh, for sure.
Yep.
I made that mistake. Well, at the time, I didn't think it was a mistake. I just thought I was serving my clients really well. But
you're still getting paid the same.
Yeah.
So it's like,
And it turned into me of, I don't own my business anymore. This business owns me.
Yeah.
And I felt that way at several points in my career. And that's not a great feeling, It's really not.
And that's exactly how I felt too. And it's like, as much as I love my career, I still want to make time to travel and have experiences. And because before I was really finding myself not making plans, because I didn't know if this shoot was going to be locked in or if this, X, Y, and Z was happening.
I get it.
And I was like always on call. And I'm like, no, sorry, I'm going to book my trips. And then, if you want to book me, you're going to have to work around my schedule.
On that note, I have a somewhat embarrassing, I used to be proud of this, and now I'm kind of embarrassed. I went for 7 years without, I would go on occasional vacations, but I never went on a vacation without my client work hard drive and my computer, because I was just always ready. And I never even told any of my clients I'm on vacation. I would just go and do it and say, yep, I can do that, and I'll just do it tonight. And it's like, that wasn't healthy.
No, you need that time to decompress as well and kind of like not think about a damn thing.
Mm-hmm. I'm better now. The 2023 Caleb is a little bit better balanced than 2013 Caleb.
I feel that.
Emily, I originally knew you as SheWolf. Tell me a little bit about that name.
Oh, SheWolf. So it's really funny because a lot of people recognize me more as SheWolf than actually Emily Skye. I went to NAB last April for Panasonic because I'm a brand ambassador for them. So I was speaking at the event in Vegas, and I would hear SheWolf like across, and I'm like, who is calling me? And it's, so the name, everyone asks, where does that name come from? Where did it start? I've always resonated with a wolf. I have a wolf tattoo on my shoulder, and I always felt like as a filmmaker, we have to make projects solo sometimes. You start the project from the ground up, and then when it gets to the place of you have funding, you start bringing in those other team members that you need to kind of make the project come to life. And so I feel like as a wolf, they hunt alone, and then they also hunt in a pack. So I feel like I really resonated with wolves in that sense, you know, because I'm very animal. I love animals so much, and I just resonated with them. And I lead from the back. I don't lead from the front of a pack. I lead from the back of a pack. I like to see who needs help from the back. I can't see when I'm in the front, you know, because I don't want to be anyone's dictator. You know, when I'm on set, I'm there to kind of listen and see what's going on and how I can best support my team so that we can all be unified at all times.
And, you know, I know because we were talking earlier, I know that there's another animal that you also have interest in, right? A hobby, or more than a hobby. Tell me a little bit about
Horses?
that. Yes.
Being equestrian has been my passion since I was a small child. Like, I knew I wanted to be, I loved storytelling when I was 6 years old and watched Close Encounters of the Third Kind. But I fell in love with horses when, from the earliest memory my mom said was like 3 or 4 years old, when she just happened to take me to a barn and I saw a horse, and that was it. It's always been my therapy. It's been my grounding experience. I always tell filmmakers that we can love our career so much, but it's really great to have an outside hobby and something else that you are just as equally passionate about. Yep. And horses are it for me. You know, that centers me, that keeps me happy. I feel so happy and light every time I leave the barn. My trainer murders me every time, you know, like she has me just working really hard on my horse, and I get off and I'm like, I feel great. You know, I'm out of breath, you know, I might be dying, but like, it doesn't matter because I feel so happy and rejuvenated, and that's it for me. So my horse is a 6-year-old off the track thoroughbred, and I've trained him from the ground up. He did not know how to jump. He didn't know how to do anything really until my trainer and I really have been working with him. So my trainer trains me, and then I'm on my horse, you know, so she's like yelling at me what to do. And it's a team effort, you know, just like in film, it's a team effort to make a project. Like, you need to surround yourself with the people that can help get you, you know, make you the best version of yourself. You have to face yourself. When you're on a horse, there's nothing else you're thinking about other than not dying. You know, like falling off, getting over that jump, you know, like, let's go. I'm thinking about him. And it just gets you out of your head. You know, everything else doesn't matter. You know, it's just you and your horse, and everything you pour into it is what you're going to get back. Yeah. And it's so rewarding to see even the struggles and the really hard days and the days I'm like, I want to give up, whatever. I keep going, and I just keep facing myself over and over and over again, because I see different versions of myself within my horse, which is a very weird thing for people that don't have a relationship with a horse or anything like that. But it's a very spiritual kind of journey for me, and it has gotten me through some of the darkest moments of my life. And so I always tell people, find that second passion that's going to help you, because even when you're having a block in writing or feeling not creative, that other hobby will help spark something in you again. Yeah. And then you need fresh eyes to go back and start again. You're
preaching to the choir. I agree. You know, you talked a little bit about, you know, horses and telling stories at a young age. Tell me about, like, maybe your first exposure or experience with video and filmmaking, and when did that happen along the journey?
I was 6. I watched Close Encounters of the Third Kind and became absolutely obsessed with aliens and sci-fi and that whole world. And so I started dressing my brothers up, like, pretty much immediately. And my mom had a camcorder. And
Younger brothers?
Yep,
of
younger
course.
brothers.
I had older sisters that dressed me up too.
Yep.
Got it.
They wore wigs. They wore makeup. They wore all kinds of funky things. And I'm really sorry that I filmed over a lot of home videos that my mom took.
Oh, back in those days.
Back in the days, you know, but I was constantly filming something and creating. And my mom, even at a younger, she's like, how do you convince people to listen to you? Because I'm a very introverted person. I'm extrovert and introvert at the same time, which doesn't make sense. But I'm extrovert when I want to be. But I'm such a recluse that I love being in my own space and away from people at the same time. So I was super quiet growing up. And my mom is like worried about me because my whole family is very loud. And they're very like just over the top, eccentric. And I'm just,
that wasn't you.
That's not me. I just observe. I observe everyone around me. very visual. Like I can memorize a lot of things just by looking at something, and I can tell you exactly where things were placed. And my mom was like, how are you getting these adults to listen to you and to like do exactly what you want them to do? And I'm like, I don't know, like I didn't know, but it was not until I was 18, 19 years old that I figured out what the word meant and what I wanted to do, because I didn't know. We didn't have social media growing up.
Yep.
There was no YouTube, there was no Instagram, there was no TikTok. I had no mentors, no one to tell me what I was feeling in my soul was normal and that like you can go after your dreams. I had nothing. There was no women influencers either in my life growing up. No one in my family is a filmmaker. It was just me. So I actually got picked up by Wilhelmina models. I was in New York, but I decided to be in the Miami home base again because I didn't want to move to New York. And I used that to kind of get into the world of film because
so I started on the front side of the camera.
I started in the front, and modeling, they loved me so much because I would sit there and just ask them all the questions about lighting constantly. And I'm like, that looks a little sourcey. I'm like, why is it so bright here? And they're like, how do you know about this? Because I studied a lot of different books, and like I was just trying to figure it all out. But I used modeling to kind of get into the world because there was no other way. There was no other way to get into it. Like now you can just send a DM or build relationships. I tell everyone, build a relationship versus just asking for something from somebody. Build that relationship, because I think relationships are much more important than just trying to network,
I agree.
So that's where it all started. I was modeling. I worked on Miami Vice, the movie. I actually landed a role, but I was in Ireland, and my agent at Wilhelmina never told me that I got the role. And when I came back, I had so many calls on the answering machine at my parents' house because at the time we didn't really have cell phones yet. And they're like, we thought you wanted this. It was the casting director. And so they ended up giving me like a little kind of role, but for the most part, I was an extra, like a type A extra, which is like in front of the camera. Forefront. And they're like, do you still want to do it? I'm like, hell yeah, I want to do it. And I went on there and I became friends with all the crew, became friends with all the camera operators. And Michael Mann showed me his storyboards, and we talked. We had some really great conversations, and I learned a lot. And it was that moment at 18, 19 years old that I looked at a sea of 800 extras, and I watched Michael Mann just directing the whole scene. And it was so magical that I was like, I am really going to be a director. This is what I'm going to do. I'm not going to just sit here and make these little videos that I was doing because I was writing stories and making my friends act in them. I knew at that moment, I really wanted to pursue that. And so that's how I got into music videos first. It was fast money. I was able to learn and be really efficient because you grab it, you go, and that's how I kind of started the whole journey.
Yeah, music videos specifically, because I've done some. I feel like it's really an exercise in comprehensive freelancing, filmmaking, because there's a lot of opinions. There's a lot of creative freedom.
You're dealing with the freaking record labels. You're dealing with the clients. You're dealing with everybody at the same time. So you have to be really quick on your feet. And if you could tell, I could tell if they don't like something. And so I have to, on the fly, adjust real quick before they say something. I'm like, oh, and they're like, oh, yeah, So it's just I feel like a therapist. I feel like as a director, you're almost like a therapist in a way, you're observing everybody, you're seeing what everyone's tics are, and you're adjusting yourself, and you just make it happen,
Yeah, and I don't know how you feel about this, but I actually feel like there's quite a bit of performing that happens behind the camera as well,
absolutely.
You got to stay up, you got to keep vibes up, energies up, and you got to, sometimes act like you know what you're doing when you don't know what you're doing. I'm sure you've experienced that. I think we all probably have.
If my actors need to perform at their best, I have to bring my best performance as well. I have to be vulnerable just like they are being vulnerable, and they have to feel safe in the environment. So I always like to make sure that the space that I create, even when we're on the fly and we have to move quick, I still want to create a very safe environment for them so that they feel they can open up and do their best. And I want to make sure I'm doing my best. So I always, no matter how tired I am, I push through and I just make sure that I'm still delivering that energy so that they could feed off of that from me as well. And it's just, it is a performance. Yeah. It absolutely is. Yeah. It's just juggling everybody and everything.
Yeah. That'd be fun to be on set
and
together
then no
sometime.
drama. You know, like I'm not a drama person. I'm super calm. And they're like, you can yell now. And I'm like, I don't yell. You know, like when I'm trying to figure out a solution, I go really quiet. And I go quiet for a second and I like kind of play it all in my head and then I'll talk.
You feel like you try to avoid drama?
Yep.
Or do you feel like you like push right through the middle of it?
I push through the middle. There's sometimes like I was working on a set and my gaffer got into a thing with the producer, and in the middle of me filming, he just walked right on set, right in front of the camera, and started telling me how upset he was with the producer. And I just like put the camera down for a second and I said, I hear what you're saying. I respect your needs right now, but we need to get through this scene and we can discuss this a little bit later. And he calmed down for a second and said, okay. And then I saw that he really calmed down and I just pretended like he didn't say anything and I kept on going. And then I acted as if nothing happened because he was fine at that time. Mm-hmm. You know, I'm like, you could tell when things need to get addressed and when things don't. Mm-hmm. And it's not our fault that you guys were late to set that day and we had to move forward and I had to pivot and start a scene outside that we didn't need lighting set up. So it's like, you gotta evaluate the situation, you know, and people just want to be heard at the end of the day. And when you tell them you can hear them and you understand what they're saying, it kind of deflates the situation. So I kind of just like go straight through.
You know, we've kind of addressed this a little bit already with some of those on-set stories, but I'm really curious, like how do you deal with problematic clients, or that you encounter a situation? I mean, it happens all the time. It's a big topic, I think, amongst freelancers. Like, man, how do you deal with clients? How do you respond to this kind of critique? And when do you say no? And when do you say yes? So maybe you can provide some insight into your mentality of client work.
I feel that the majority of clients don't know what they want. That's a huge thing.
That's a hot take.
You know, they come in, they think they know what they want. And then it's not until you send them the first draft that they have an opinion of what they really want, you know? So it's just a process of talking through and kind of weeding through their expectations, because sometimes clients have really high expectations and then sometimes they don't know what to expect, especially when you're dealing with new clients that are maybe just coming into social media. You know, I work with a lot of brands that are wanting content for their social media platforms. So a lot of people are steering away from like the traditional commercial. Mm-hmm. Now it's about content for TikTok and Reels, and that's pretty much where they're pouring their money into, right? Yeah. So it's just about, you know, when I work with a client, I really like to hear what their expectations are, and then send them examples of reels and things that kind of like sound like what they're looking for. And I kind of show them that and they say yes, no, and then if they say yes, then I kind of stick to it. But then it's honestly, it really is until like the end when they see it all together that they sort of figure out what they truly want or don't want. How I work with like clients that might have a lot of notes, because I've had a client that didn't have much notes, and then I had a client that you were done with the project, they're happy with it, and then 2 days later they ask if you can add X, Y, and Z, and I'm like, I'm gone at this point. I'm like, I'm sorry, I'm out of town. I do not have time to go on, you know, getting more content for you, but you know, hey, you can pay me X, Y, and Z if you want extra things added at this point, because we already agreed that it was great, you were happy, it was done, you posted it. And that's just the way it is, because your time is valuable. And I think don't be afraid to ask for your rate, because the worst thing that can happen is that they say no, and then you just saved yourself a really big headache for not doing a project that you're not going to get paid your worth, and then having to do a million edits and a million things that just could be a mess. I've done that too. I navigate it, and it comes to post.
What you said about clients not really knowing what they want,
they don't.
I totally agree. And actually, one strategy I used when I was doing a lot of freelance and commercial work was I never called, you know, that first draft, I never called it a rough draft. I would just say, I brought a lot of confidence to the table. Whether it was like real confidence or just kind of artificial, I brought a lot of confidence, and I'd say, here's your video. And then it would just, it brought that level of confidence of, oh, this isn't a rough draft. This is polished. This is ready to post. And I've had to talk to even my staff a little bit about that too. Like when we're sending, you know, client work, it's like, hey, let's bring confidence right to the forefront, polished, finished that they could post right then. And
I absolutely agree. I never show any of my work when it comes to a client, because in case they accidentally post it, I want to make sure that I'm happy with actually like the edit and everything, and that it's color graded, everything is good, so that they see that. So if they do accidentally post it or something, it's not like, oh crap.
It's still pretty good.
It's still pretty good, So I absolutely agree with you on that, going in there with confidence, because again, most of the time when you're dealing with now social media content for brands, they typically are just starting. A lot of clients that I'm meeting are just getting into social media, or they're just now starting to like kind of branch out that world a little bit. It's important for us to be able to steer them and, that space to kind of feel like they can have a voice as well, but make sure you're getting paid your worth as well.
There's a lot of great clients out there, I'm sure.
There is.
And I've had a lot of them. I'm curious if you have like a particular story of like a exceptionally difficult client or project, and if like what that was and what you learned from it.
I don't want to say like it was extremely difficult where I couldn't get myself out of it or navigate through it. But I had one client that had monkeys and a bunch of things, and he wanted the whole thing done in one take. Like, so I'm following him, like I'm leading him through this whole room, and there's like clowns and there's things going on, and it was just like a shit show. And he was like, we could get it done, right? And I'm like, I told him, hey, we have lighting, we have these things we need to kind of like pause, and we're dealing with monkeys. Like it's kind of,
literal monkeys.
And the budget we had was it was not the biggest budget to be able to have a group of people that can cue everything as we're going down the road, right? He didn't really understand it. Everything, he just wanted to go cheap. He wanted the cheapest, but he brought monkeys and clowns and like all these things. And I'm like, okay, so I really had to navigate that one, because he had his expectations of this one shot of me leading him, through this crowd. But in reality, I had to tell him the reality. Hey, you're going to see this light. Hey, like we have no one to cue X, Y, and Z at the same time. It was just about learning that it's okay to tell a client no as well. At the end of the day, they're still paying you for your experience. And if they don't want to listen, then you try it their way and then let them see. But that was for me, like probably the most difficult was just kind of dealing with clients that feel like they know best in like certain situations. Sometimes I have to like, all right, well, we'll do it. And then they can see why.
Sounds to me like maybe a lesson learned from that, probably, yeah, I'm learning it, is like getting your expectations in line with each other. Like, hey, here's the project, here's the expectations, budget, all this.
Absolutely.
Let's get on the same page, because what I'm seeing here on the budget is not going to match what.
That's exactly. And you explain it to them, and then the day of set, they come in with all of their like, oh, we're going to do this and this. I'm like, no, that's not what we're doing. That's not what we agreed on. We don't have X, Y, and Z to be able to make all of that happen. Yeah. Like I physically cannot sit there and maneuver the lights while I'm operating the camera, leading you through a crowd. I just can't do it. I'm not like, I don't know. I don't have a clone. So it's just about being open and honest with them as well. And then putting your foot down when you need to, so that you also don't get taken advantage of as well.
What role do you think social media plays in promoting your work as a freelancer and filmmaker?
Everything. I feel that social media is like your resume. Social media, people could get an idea who you are. You're branding yourself. I feel like we're all entrepreneurs. You have to be as a filmmaker, because no one else is going to brand you but yourself. Not your manager, not your agent. People think, oh, because you get an agent, you're just going to get handed all the work. It doesn't work like that. You have to go out and hustle for your work regardless. I don't rely on anybody to get me work. I create my own opportunities and I go out. Everything today is social media. I got my opportunities with Red through social media. I got, I did their educations. They met me through social media doing that. I've gotten Panasonic through social media. I've gotten clients and film work, everything, because of the presence I'm carrying on. I didn't go into social media thinking, oh, I'm going to be a quote unquote influencer or be in that world. It just kind of happened.
Well, and you've done a really good job with it too. And I think you do a good job of like documenting when you're on set and stuff too, I imagine, because that's I think how I came across you is not even yourself, but other people were sharing pictures of you, holding the camera and doing all this stuff.
Yeah.
I'm like, who's this girl? And so you're out there, on all these filmmaking channels and all that. You're there.
Wild because it was, I think 4 years ago. I shot a documentary, like a docu-series, and I was slinging Cook Anamorphics on Reds. I had this one picture where I was slinging the camera, and I woke up in like Filmmakers World, indie filmmakers, learn filmmaking, like they all of a sudden all shared this one picture, and I blew up overnight. And then they were consistently posting me daily for 2 years straight. I was just like, what is going on? It was great. And then it also was like overwhelming. I want to say the first 6 months of experiencing that, I went from not really getting any kind of light shown on me. Like I felt very like under the radar to all of a sudden everyone was nitpicking everything I did. And they had an opinion for absolutely everything that I was doing. Oh, you're just a camera model. You're not really a filmmaker. And I'm like, you can literally look at my work on my website, like right here. Like, that's cool. You think I'm just borrowing these cameras and taking pictures with them for the hell of it, like in these random locations? Okay, cool. And so it was really hard to navigate that at first because people look at women, unfortunately, because I was wearing leggings and tank tops, because who wants to carry a camera in jeans and bend in jeans is beyond me. Yeah. It's hard. You're like, you get stuck and then you're trying to get back up and like, it's just not fun. It's just, there was so much scrutiny over how I dressed and how I held my camera and how I did things. I'm like, I'm just getting a damn shot.
It's interesting. Yeah, I kind of feel like, I don't think that the dudes would get that same
No, they don't.
Scrutiny.
They absolutely do not. After I started coming through social media, I noticed guys trying to mimic, funny enough, how I'm holding the camera or how I'm doing something. And yet they were on my page bashing me for like quote unquote posing. But let's be real, like if I'm in the middle shooting and then they're like, hey, I see him taking a picture, I'll stop for a second and pose like in between a take, because who wants to see my double chin? Like
I make some weird faces
and I'm like,
too.
Like I'm making horrific faces and I'm like, I'm not putting that out there for the world to see. Like I'm good. I'm happy we had to wear masks because I could hide like making weird faces half the time. So I was like, what is wrong with taking a moment to get a good shot? It doesn't hurt anybody. I'm like, because that's going out there. If I'm getting scrutinized already just for that, imagine a really bad picture. With social media, it was shocking for a bit, but it's honestly become a really great space now once I navigated that world. And I stopped feeling like the need that I had to prove myself constantly, because I had this really overwhelming need that I felt like I had to prove myself. Yeah. And I had no reason to prove. I already knew who I was. I know my worth. I know I'm freaking hustling, and that's all. I'm doing the best I can do, more than a lot of people that are just sitting on their couch and complaining and being keyboard warriors. And I'm like, oh,
you're out doing it. You're
I
out
was like, whatever. I'm at least out here trying. Do I think I'm the best? No. Do I know I need to work on a lot of things? Absolutely. I'm never going to stop learning until I die. But I hope to be doing this every day of my life, until I get to that place.
One thing you talked about, I'm going to change directions again here. I don't love talking about gear a lot, but I like a little bit. My question to you is, in a world where, a lot of the video content is going vertical.
Yeah.
And anamorphic is kind of going the opposite way, right? Extra wide. So like, how do you reconcile those? Is in your mind, are those just like totally different content creation strategies? And there's, just tell me a little bit about your Anamorphics.
I really do love Anamorphics. I just shot my latest short film called The Meal on the Atlas Mercury lenses that aren't out yet, which is, I'm super blessed that I got to experience those. They're super light, by the way. They're so light. And the Orions, the Atlas Orions, are obviously heavier. But I love the look of an anamorphic. I like how it can morph something. It kind of like makes it feel like a fishbowl. And sometimes, when you like when you pull back or go in really close. And I'm a fan of it. I think for social media, it doesn't work necessarily for vertical or things like that, unless you zoom in on them, but you're not going to get the full effect of Anamorphics. So I feel like it doesn't really work too much in that kind of world for like content, if that's what you're looking for. Obviously, if you're showing a trailer and you cut it for a reel or a TikTok, it works fine. But I would say it's a little too extreme to use it for just content. But I'm a fan. I like it. I like spherical too. It honestly depends on what the project is and what it's calling for, and I love dabbling.
In terms of, making films and content creation, how do you keep up with like the trends and new technologies? Or maybe a better way to ask that question is like, where do you find your inspiration these days?
I would say if you are on, TikTok or Instagram and you're looking at reels, what I do for the film aspect of things, because my page is filmmaking, I find if I see something that kind of speaks to me and I can make it film related, I do it that way. So if there's something trending on TikTok and it's talking about, put a finger down, I'll do like a put a finger down and talk about a really bad experience or something like that about film though, or there was this one video that people were posting about running away from different relationships. Like you see the mother-in-law chasing the woman.
And I saw this one.
Yeah.
And you were wearing all the hats of the different people on set.
Exactly. Yes. So then I was actually the first person to do one like that as a filmmaker. So it was guerrilla filmmaking. So it was kind of like, you got the actress running and then, the cinematographer running behind him was like, I got the shot. And then you have the PA, the poor PA that's freaked out, that's like running because, they're running away. And then the director, the talent is like, like being, they got the shot. And then the director's just holding all the drives and stuff and like running. And then you have the patrol that's like looking for the film permit, like chasing behind you. So I did that whole thing and that went viral. And then I saw people starting to come out with their own versions of it or whatnot. But yeah, that's basically what I do is I'll find something that resonates with me and I make it film.
Yeah, you do a good job with your social, just making it interesting, making it fun.
I'm like, hey, that what that makes sense. I'm like, that would be funny, I like doing comedies.
If there was a young freelancer sitting right here, what are like maybe 3 things that you would tell them to set them up for success? 3 short things.
Boundaries.
Good.
Getting mentors. And listening.
Boundaries, mentors, listening.
Because I think as a young filmmaker, I was not a good listener. I didn't want to listen to my team very well. I was like my way or the highway when I first started out because I was overcompensating how nervous I was. And I feel like I was hiding behind those things instead of like listening to my team that's experienced and wanted to help me. So that was a huge mistake that I made when I first started out as a filmmaker is that I didn't want to listen. I didn't want to take direction from them because I had a misunderstanding of what it was to be a leader on a set. And then absolutely boundaries, setting your boundaries and letting people know, no, I'm good. No, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to take that job that's paying me nothing, and you want me to freaking die basically on set. I'm good. Thanks. And even learning to walk off a set that's uncomfortable or something. I've walked off a set before that I was DPing in New Mexico. The director, who's a DGA director, a pretty big one, by the way, tried to get me to do coke the entire time I was shooting on with him. And he flew it from New York and he would not leave me alone. He was hitting on me the entire time. And all I asked for on that set as a DP is having a real gaffer and a real grip team. I don't think that's too much to ask for. They gave me an editor as a gaffer and he didn't really know lighting. And so I was struggling hardcore. And then they were upset at me because things weren't happening the way they needed to happen because I didn't have a gaffer and I was trying to sling it and still make our days. And that put me at risk. And it put the other grips at risk too because they were using C-stands that were not equipped to hold 18Ks in a 20-foot window. It just wasn't working. It was swaying like the wind. It was bad. So I had to learn. I've never walked off a set before, but after trying to survive it was a 4-week shoot. I only stayed 2 weeks. I left. I was like, this is not worth my mental health to be treated like this, because none of the producers were helping me. Nobody was listening to me. I would tell my first Stacy, who's a guy, the same thing. I was telling them, they wouldn't listen. He would repeat what I was saying to them. They would listen and tell him, great idea. And that was just the dynamic. I'm like, why'd you bring me on if you contradicted everything I was saying? So as soon as I walked off, they flew a DP out from LA and his gaffer. So I had to learn to set my boundaries, right? Like, nope, it's okay to walk off set if you're not being treated right, and your worth is way more important. Your mental health and your safety means more than getting a shot, in my opinion. So if you don't feel safe and you don't feel like acknowledged, heard, and worthy, like your worth is being like, you're being discriminated against in all capacities, walk away from it. So set your boundaries, even with your rates. Know that you're not going to go lower than this, and be okay with that. Stick with it. And then absolutely having mentors is important, because we need to grow and evolve constantly. And the best way to do that is learning from more experienced filmmakers, or even my younger filmmakers I learned from too. My DP that I worked with on the short film is the first time I passed my torch, by the way. I've always shot and directed my short films. And in this one, I brought my good friend Julian Terry on. He did a really amazing film called Don't Peek. And he's actually sold every single short film he has done to like Amblin and all these different places, and he's just like bomb. And I was like, you know what, I think let's make magic together. And we did, and I learned so much from him. He's younger than me. He's like 4 years younger than me. I'm learning from a different perspective, and I think that's beautiful, that we took his style and my style and we made something really great together as like a collaborative kind of thing. And so for me, even like doing that, is I'm constantly learning from people around me. And so you want to have mentors of all walks of life throughout your life, because it's going to mold you and evolve you, and you're never going to stop learning. I mean, how boring would it be if you don't want any help from anybody and you think you know everything? Because you don't. You want to fill that in with other voices to help build your voice.
Wow.
And this industry is constantly evolving. We don't want to be a one-hit wonder. We want to stick around, Kind
of along those same lines, I'm curious now, like what would you tell 25-year-old Emily? What's one piece of advice you'd give her?
Patience. To be patient, because I'm still learning that. I'm by far probably the most impatient person ever. But when I was 25, I was even worse. I jumped in and I didn't kind of explore it first. I was too quick. I needed to like you were saying with the yes, you're really quick to saying yes. I was quick to saying yes and jumping head first. Yep. And I got myself in trouble so many times and stuck in so many different places. And so now I'm learning I have to step back. I have to like evaluate the situation and then decide if this is something that I really wanted to do. I don't have to take every story that comes my way. I can decide, do I connect with the story or do I not? Are these the producers that I want to work with, or are they not? Because whoever you work with, you're stuck with them for quite a while. And from past experiences of learning that some producers that I brought on that were stealing money from the production and thinking that they could get away with certain things. And I mean, I've experienced this even recently where it's a whole thing. So you learn how to kind of evaluate and protect yourself better. Contracts are a must always. 25-year-old me thought, oh, we're all friends here. We don't need, no, bullshit. You need contracts. It doesn't matter, even if it's your boyfriend or your girlfriend or whoever it is, or a dog. You need contracts with everybody to protect yourself. And it's not because you're trying to be rude or create drama. It's because you need to protect yourself, and you're, again, your own entrepreneur. So you need to protect your brand and your time and what you're creating. So I would definitely tell myself to be more patient and to contract up.
Nice. Love that. It's potent. We kind of touched on this earlier, but I'm wondering if there's like one specific time where like you really, not necessarily a client problem, but a time where you just like royally messed up or made a mistake and had to cover behind you. Is there any story that comes to mind?
Yeah. I made the mistake of bringing on a producer on a music video that I was doing. He went rogue, literally. I didn't know the area, so I brought him on so that he can location scout and do the things that we needed to get done in that area. but it was a disaster because he wasn't like a real kind of like producer, and he sold himself as more than what is. So I had to deal with like the record label that hired me to do the project. I was just producing this project, and I had to navigate that whole world because, again, he stole like a lot of money as well. And that's a known thing in the music world. A lot of producers steal money throughout like the production. They'll skimp or not pay people, and then they keep money. And he was doing that a lot. And so that was a huge mistake on my part, was not doing more due diligence. Like I thought, like, because he was recommended, but I don't know, I didn't trust my gut, and I felt weird about certain things, and I still kind of went for it. And that's another thing, trust your gut. If your gut is telling you to run away or you don't feel right,
trust your gut.
Trust your damn gut, because it goes across the board with absolutely everything. Like our gut is there to protect us.
And I think sometimes like for the non-creative, non-feeler, something like, oh, just trust your gut. It's like, what does that even mean? And I will try to explain
that little bad feeling that you get.
Yeah, it's that. And I would also say I am good at telling stories with visuals and other things. I'm not always that articulate. So I can't even articulate why I'm feeling a certain way. It's a bad feeling. I know I can't explain why, but my instincts, my intuition, my gut, everything in me is saying no. And so sometimes just trusting that and not being able to explain it all to a business partner or to a client.
Yeah,
and be like,
absolutely.
Nope, it's just not going to work.
You have to learn to listen to yourself. And here's another story. I was at a gear shop the other day here in California, and I was buying a ring for my matte box because my matte box is a 110 by Wooden Camera, and the anamorphic lenses from Atlas that are Mercury's are smaller. And so I needed a smaller ring to fit in the matte box. So Julian and I went to this place, and the guy is like, oh, it's a 114 matte box. I'm like, no, it's a 110 matte box. No, it's not. The guy would not take me saying, yes, it is, gave us the wrong ring size because it didn't fit. We get home, sure enough, yep, it's a 110 matte box. I'm like, God, I knew I was right. Like I'm sitting there, but I just like, again, this guy just was trying to throw his weight around, telling me I didn't basically know what I was talking about when I'm looking at this matte box. Like I've been working with it this whole time. And then I just was like, okay, maybe I am wrong. Maybe I am wrong that it really is a 114. And then I realized when I came back, I was like, I was freaking right, And so yeah, again, that goes back to trusting your gut and knowing that you know what you're talking about too.
Yeah.
Sometimes I'll second guess myself a lot, but
I'm curious, since we're kind of talking about gear a little bit, what's like your go-to gear setup? I know a lot of us out here, there's a lot of cameras, we kind of like this and that, but like you're out, filming a scene, you got one camera, one lens. What is it?
So if I am just doing content, my Lumix S5 Mark II is my go-to with a Rode mic set up on the top. My go-to for that. When it comes to films, short films, my go-to has always been like a red Monstro or Helium and a good anamorphic lens. And I have been using like Atlas, Orions. But I also, after playing with the Mercurys, I really love the Mercurys. So that is my go-to. But because I've been working with red for 9 years, my first AC was the first person to teach me how to use a red 9 years ago, and it was a Scarlett. He was like number 65 or 70 or something like that, and purchasing a Scarlett. So like that was so cool, and that's why I've been so loyal to red all these years, is because of what they stand for. I love Jared. I think Jared's amazing. He really believes in his filmmakers, and he really makes cameras for a true filmmaker. Someone that run and guns, goes out there, gets the shot, has fun, is just this gritty. It's like a grittier filmmaker. And that's what I really resonate with. So yeah, red has always been like my go-to kind of like sling-in camera that I love to work with.
Yeah. I have a red Gemini.
Yeah.
And I think my favorite ever lens on that is the Kawa anamorphic, the Evolution
Yeah,
lens,
they're wonderful too. Yeah. I mean,
Go to town
the
with that.
K35s, like I shot my feature with that, and the K35's 50 was my happy place all the time. I love a good spherical vintage glass myself. So it's hard to say that one that would make you happy for the rest of your life. Maybe that's why I go wrong in relationships. But, it's like, it's just like it's hard. It's hard, like, because there's so many cool lenses out there.
Yeah.
But I would say that, yeah.
Emily, in this industry, unfortunately, it's dominated by a lot of men. And I feel like as a female filmmaker, you've probably had to blaze a lot of trails. And I'm sure you've got some stories to share there. I'm curious, like, if you can share maybe any experiences where you felt like maybe you were, excluded or maybe not given the proper respect just because of being a female filmmaker.
Absolutely. I feel that women in general in any industry has to prove themselves. Again, like me saying, I have to prove myself. Like, I feel like I have to work harder to show that I belong here and that I know what I'm talking about, because I do get a lot of people second guessing me constantly. It's they think that I don't know what I'm talking about, and then I have to work even harder to kind of get my point across. And now I go on set and I just demand respect no matter what. Anybody that's disrespectful, not just to me, but to anybody on the set, they're gone. I don't tolerate disrespect of any sort on my set. And I also treat everyone on my set with respect, because I want to be treated that way.
What advice would you give to other women or young women in the industry who are trying to progress?
Make your own content. I feel that, again, nothing is handed to you, even man, woman, whatever, nothing's handed to you. You have to make it happen. So I create my own opportunities constantly. So if you want to tell a story in that genre, then go and shoot something in that genre and with the people that you want to work with, and make it happen so that people can see what you're doing and that you're capable of telling that story. Because no matter what, we still have to show that we can tell that story. So constantly be making your own projects, figuring it out. And I love giving other women opportunities. So I always film my projects with women that are learning or established in the film industry. We're always coming together. I want to make sure that I always surround myself with really amazing people, period, and keep it really diverse on the team side, because I feel like I don't want to discriminate against men either, because I love working with men as well. Yeah. So I think as women, know that your voice is worth being listened to, and that you have intuition for a reason, and that you can make anything happen. And just because someone's saying no to you doesn't mean that they're right. Just go do it anyway and prove them wrong. At the end of the day, my biggest slap is doing something that people tell me I can't do and then doing it better.
One thing you were talking about earlier is, like, sometimes there's some people drinking haterade in the comment section of your stuff. So how do you deal with the haters? And I think maybe part of it is, you are a female filmmaker in an industry kind of where there's a lot of dudes.
Yeah.
And maybe it's something else, but how do you deal with the haters?
Depending on what mood I'm in.
How sassy you're feeling.
If I'm really sassy, I'll rip them. What I do though is I don't respond. I just screenshot their comment and I put it in my story and tag them. And I say my little quirky, like, whatever. They go so crazy. They get mad. It's, I didn't mean to say it like that. I'm like, well, you said it. You put it out there. Like, what were you trying to say? And so I just call them out, and they get so flabbergasted, because my audience, some of them are crazy and they just go after them. And then they get tagged a million times, and then they end up blocking me. So... And I'm like, sorry, you're the one that put the comment out there. I'm just putting it out there in my story. So it depends really what mood I'm in and like how feisty I'm feeling. But sometimes it hits me and I'm like, yeah, you caught me on a day of the full moon.
The wolf's coming out, man.
The wolf is coming out. You want to play? Let's play.
Emily, in this industry, unfortunately, it's dominated by a lot of men. And I feel like as a female filmmaker, you've probably had to blaze a lot of trails, and I'm sure you've got some stories to share there. I'm curious, like, if you can share maybe any experiences where you felt like maybe you were, excluded or maybe not given the proper respect just because of being a female filmmaker.
Absolutely. I feel that women in general in any industry has to prove themselves. Again, like me saying, I have to prove myself. Like I feel like I have to work harder to show that I belong here and that I know what I'm talking about, because I do get a lot of people second guessing me constantly. It's they think that I don't know what I'm talking about, and then I have to work even harder to kind of get my point across. And now I go on set and I just demand respect no matter what. Anybody that's disrespectful, not just to me, but to anybody on the set, they're gone. I don't tolerate disrespect of any sort on my set. And I also treat everyone on my set with respect, because I want to be treated that way. So it goes both ways, for that.
What advice would you give to other women or young women in the industry who are trying to progress?
Make your own content. I feel that, again, nothing is handed to you. Even man, woman, whatever, nothing's handed to you. You have to make it happen. So I create my own opportunities constantly. So if you want to tell a story in that genre, then go and shoot something in that genre and with the people that you want to work with, and make it happen so that people can see what you're doing and that you're capable of telling that story. Because no matter what, we still have to show that we can tell that story. So constantly be making your own projects, figuring it out. And I love giving other women opportunities. So I always film my projects with women that are learning or established in the film industry. We're always coming together. I want to make sure that I always surround myself with really amazing people, period, and keep it really diverse on the team side, because I feel like I don't want to discriminate against men either, because I love working with men as well. Yeah. So I think as women, know that your voice is worth being listened to, and that you have intuition for a reason, and that you can make anything happen. And just because someone's saying no to you doesn't mean that they're right. Just go do it anyway and prove them wrong. At the end of the day, my biggest slap is doing something that people tell me I can't do and then doing it better.
I know that you're like I don't know the best name, like a comprehensive filmmaker, from story to publishing on a platform. I think you can do a little bit of every element: storyboarding, script writing, pre-production, filming, post-production, all that. Where do you feel like your specialty is? Like in all those roles that it takes, where's your specialty?
My specialty is definitely, it's hard to say, because I've always been the person that I take the concept, like an idea that just comes into my brain, write it out, and then it just evolves, and I love the entire process of taking that concept and seeing it finished in post. And I can't sleep actually until it's all completely out of my head and I'm seeing it. That's just the way how I operate. So for me, I think my strongest place is directing. I think also DPing too, because it kind of goes, I'm very visual. So being the two sides, I'm not just looking at it as a director perspective, but I'm also always looking at it from a visual perspective as well, and how I want to move the camera and how I want to enhance that moment with the camera. So it's even when I have my DP, we're always talking about how can I get that moment. And so it kind of goes hand in hand for me when it comes to telling a story. I don't look at just one thing. It's just that, because I'll take a concept and I'll evolve it throughout the entire process. And it's just, I've been doing so many pieces for so long that it just all feels like me. I don't feel complete if I'm not a part of the script. If I'm not a part of the developing of the script, or if I can't put input on or whatever it is, I won't feel connected to it. I need to feel some kind of connection in the sense of being able to put a little of my voice in there too, So I love being a part of the process of casting. I'm not that kind of director that they're just going to cast whoever and I'm just going to walk on set and be handed a latte and then call it a day. Me, I love being involved in the entire process because I care about every single moment, from location to what's on their plate to what they're wearing. It all just tells a story, and so it's really hard for me to say what my exact strong like one thing is, but I guess it would be directing and like DPing and like the mold of that. Yeah. But overall, I just love it.
On the DP side, I believe you're a fellow handheld cinematographer. Is that right? Yeah, yes. Which I'm a huge proponent of. I ditched the dollies and the tripods and the gimbals a while ago. I love shooting handheld because I feel like it gives me maximum creativity and flexibility. Yeah. I don't always see like through a storyboard like how the shot should actually look. I kind of have to like
play with it.
With it when I'm on set there. And to tell me about how you approach handheld filmmaking.
Handheld for me it's just like another extension of my arm. Mm-hmm. It's kind of when I'm behind the camera, I get to connect to the actors through the lens. And like you said, I can make my own adjustments. Handheld, I have the flexibility to move and really feel. And to me, it's a very organic and raw kind of feeling when you're telling a story. Obviously, I use handheld wisely. If the story needs more of a static or dolly kind of feel to it, I'm going to be filming. Like The Meal was all dolly and static shots, which is very new for me because a lot of my stuff I do is handheld. But when I do handheld, it's because the character is feeling uneasy or unhinged and you want the audience to feel connected to them in that sense. So it is also important to know what the story calls for, you know, because it's not always going to work for every single shot in some projects that require it to be steady. But I feel super comfortable with it. I like to hold it on my forearm. And I actually have a prototype that I'm creating right now called SheWolf armor that will specifically help you out and protect your arm. Oh, nice. And almost be like a plate to hold your camera.
Oh, I love that. Mm-hmm. That's awesome. You know, I think
working with the guy who creates all the gear for the NFL, and it's going to be super freaking rad, and that's all I could say about it. But I'm going to get the full design on April 8th.
Nice. Can't wait to see that.
Yes.
One thing on the, I don't want to overplay like the intuition and the feel and the gut thing, but I feel like when I'm holding a camera handheld without any restrictions, right? Like
you're
it feels
flexible.
More intuitive. Even like the motion of my body in response to whoever I'm filming or whatever I'm filming, it just feels right to me.
It does.
And I've struggled to articulate that in the past. You do a better job of articulating it than I do, but that's been like my number one, cinematography technique.
It's just comfortable. It's my go-to kind of thing, run and gun, right? You run and gun it, and it's easy. You're in, you're out, and it is. People are like, why aren't you using an easy rig? I go, it's not called, handheld isn't called easy rig. I mean, yeah, people use an easy rig. Great. However you want to get your shot, you got it. But true handheld is not using an easy rig. I don't make fun of people often. I don't judge people often. But when I do see someone walking around with an easy rig using a mirrorless camera, and they're like this big and there's built-in stabilization within that camera already. And they're like, it took longer for you to set that up than to just get out of the car and run and gun with your
You would have been better off taking that 5 minutes, 10 minutes and getting
the content.
Extra shots.
Exactly. Yeah. I think that's the biggest thing, when it comes to that. Like, the sky's the limit now with mirrorless cameras, by the way. You could do wonders like full frame and even the micro four thirds. Yeah. There's endless opportunities in our hands now.
Somewhat of a personal question. What do you feel like is one of the bigger sacrifices that you've had to make for your career?
I've lost friends along the way, but I wouldn't say that it was like a loss per se. It's more people that you outgrow because they don't understand or they try to put you down. What I've learned is keeping the right people around you at all times, because in this industry, if you go with the wrong group of people, you can get very lost and go down a path of no return. And sometimes, like, I feel like in my younger career, I was getting involved with the wrong people and it just wasn't making me feel good. And so it's more about learning that it's okay to let go of certain friendships that aren't filling you up in a positive way instead of depleting you and taking from you. You know, we don't need no energy vampires, you know, like sucking you dry, because it's enough out there, you know? So I think for me, like a sacrifice was learning how to kind of walk away from certain things that weren't serving my health anymore. I don't know if that makes sense, but for me, that's something that I kind of learned along the way, is that it's okay to walk away again. Also, I think a sacrifice is that I do lose time with my kid as well, and that's just a given, and it's always going to happen. You know, I could be on a set for a couple months and I have to travel back and forth on weekends to see my kid, and I'm missing certain things that are happening in his life. And it's just something that I have to navigate, that feeling of feeling guilty sometimes, you know, because I think in this career, you're going to feel guilty, and it just hits you in certain ways when you're a parent. Yeah. And I'm a single parent, you know, so I'm making the income. I don't have dual income. And in today's world, it's freaking hard to support yourself by yourself and a kid, pay your rent, pay this, pay that, even just get gas or groceries. Like I spent $200 at the store, and I'm like, what did I get? You know, I got a banana, you know? So it's like I can't feed him with that, you know? So it's just really like the sacrificing of certain time and moments that I've had to miss because I am going after my career as well.
Yeah. You know, I can see that you're good at a lot of things, and you're also thoughtful about a lot of things. It's been inspirational. This can be somewhat comical or not.
Yeah. What
is one thing that you are bad at?
Communication.
in your career? Communication?
Sometimes no. It's more of, I'm actually very communicative, you know, like I'm always talking, you know, like I make sure that my gaffer has the shot list, storyboard, like diagrams, like everyone is on the same page. So I have a lot of I'm really good at communicating. I would say something I'm really bad at is, being patient. I'm still, again, that's something that I'm learning how to be, is patient. You know, my AD never has to tell me, hey, we're the time, because I'm looking at my time and I'm like, all right, we got to move. We got to go. We got this. Okay, we got it. All right, cool. We got to go. So for me, it's just being a little more patient. I have learned to be a little bit more of a stickler for things and being okay to say, hey, we're doing that again because I didn't like this one thing in the shot.
You know, that brought up a topic for me that I talk about occasionally. And when you're on set like that, right, and you're looking at the time, you know, there's a lot of people being paid, locations, but there's a lot of money flying around.
Yep.
And just expectations flying around.
Absolutely.
I think something that's not talked about a ton in our industry as cinematographers, DPs, directors, is that like pre-shoot and during shoot anxiety and stress that we feel. And for me, it doesn't really ever seem to go away. I've been doing this for like 13 years now, and I still just get like butterflies, and I'm like, it's more than butterflies. It's like a weight of like everything that's about to happen. Tell me how you deal with some of that anxiety.
It is real. You know, it's real about the whole anxiety and the pressure. It's more of like the pressure. For some reason, maybe, I don't know what it is, but I turn into somebody else. I kind of have like my alter ego that kind of comes out. And I don't know how she handles and manages half the things that I handle and manage. So the short that we did was an 8-page script, all at a dining room table, and talk about continuity of food and a waiter walking around pouring wine at different cues, dessert being switched out, you know, swapped out for like, you know, dinner being swapped out for dessert, all of that fun stuff. And I had the location for a total of 6 hours. We ended up having to shoot. We were like, and we had to start shooting at 7. We got there at 5 and we were supposed to start rolling at 6, but we ended up rolling at 7 because when we walked in, the location changed the dining room. From the pictures of what you were seeing, yes, it was set up in a different way.
I know.
And then you walk in and the dining room is in a completely different place now. And everything that you mapped out is now swapped. There's different windows there. There's different everything there. So we walked in yesterday and I was like, oh shit. You know, like we all kind of looked at each other. We're like, oh okay. You know, we had to go on the fly, change absolutely everything, and swap out the order of how we were going to film it, and just had to go on the fly. So we shot for a total of 4.5 hours, 8 pages that we had to get through, all the coverage on a dining room table. You know, like it was
stressful.
It was stressful. And plus, again, like you're paying people, and I can't go over because the location wraps exactly at 12. They don't give you more time. You can't get 12:30. You can't get 12:15. Like I was like, I'll pay you. Yeah. No, they're done. You got to be out. You got to be cleaned and ready to go by 12. So we wrapped at 11:36. And we were out by 12.
Nice.
So basically what I did was I saved the master shot for the very end so that we can clear out all the lights, because we had to get the master shot. So we can only have the one overlight, light over the table to show that, so that I can just get everything else around it so we can get that beautiful wide shot. And then I got my establishing shot too. So I was able to do my one movement, and then we were out. So all that lighting was able to be outside and packed up and ready to go when we were doing our last shot, and that's how we were able to get out. But I felt the weight. I felt the weight yesterday. You asked me how I handle it. I don't know. Like I sit there and I'm like, all right, we're either going to make this happen or we're going to fail miserably. So, and I can't. So I have to pull it together.
For me, when I'm feeling that like stress and anxiety, I try to convert it to fuel.
Yeah.
And try to let it out in the form of good directing and
like
good energy.
Energy,
It's not always how I feel. That's what I'm saying. It's
in the
bit
inside,
of a performance.
It is. It's a performance. You're putting on an act half the time. Another thing, too, that brings me back to being an equestrian is that only one of you could be afraid, and it can't be you. So your horse can have meltdowns and freakouts, but you cannot. You have to be confident the entire time, because if not, that horse will not jump that fence. That horse will not take any direction from you. They have to feel trust at all times. So I think that's one of my biggest things that I've learned through like writing and everything and translating it into film, is that only one of us can be afraid, and it cannot be me. And I have to go in there and be confident. Even if I don't feel it, I have to be it. So like the same thing with my horse, like no matter what's going to happen at that fence, he might refuse it, but we're still going over it. And I do. Like there's times he would hesitate, and I still like go, lock. I know you're not going nowhere. We hop it. It looks really bad, but we get over it. So that's the same thing. Like I kind of I brought that into filmmaking as well. Is that all right? Everyone else can freak out, but I can't.
When I look back at my last 18 years ago, since turning 20, a lot of regrets and career regrets, personal regrets, whatever. I wonder if there's any is in terms of your career and your progression in filmmaking. Is there any like regret that stands out to you in your past?
Trusting the wrong people. I feel like when I was younger, my eyes were wide-eyed and glossy and excited about the world, and I'm still excited. But now I'm very cautious. Now I proceed with caution. And before I kind of dove in head first, thinking it was all rainbows and unicorns, and it was not. And you get taken advantage of quite easily. So I think my biggest regret is not being as cautious. And but again, at the same time, I don't really regret anything. It's like a weird balance of like, I don't regret because I wouldn't be here and I wouldn't be molded. So I wouldn't say I even like regret it. I look back and I'm like, oh, I shouldn't have trusted that person. But then I kind of move on from it. So for me, I don't even regret my, being married and because I have my son. I'm super grateful that I have my son and then I have this relationship, So the same thing with my career. Like, yeah, there were some really shitty people that I've met that have been total creepy and X, Y, and Z. But all it did was shape and mold me to be a better version of myself and what I don't want to be. So I just pivoted, I think this industry is a lot of pivoting. You have to pivot constantly. And so, no, I don't regret. Yeah. I take that back. I don't regret anything.
Nice. And one thing you said at the start too, of like how you came in with a lot of excitement, you've learned caution, and I would say too that those two can coexist together.
Absolutely.
You're
coasting.
Yeah. You can be excited and cautious and have creative inspiration and have boundaries, and you can do it all at the same time. It just takes some balance.
It's all balancing. Yeah. It's a balancing act that, again, there's going to be good days and there's going to be not so great days, and it's okay to have those days. And I like to tell everyone too that the only way you fail is by not trying.
Hey, now you're really preaching to the choir. That when I think about my regrets, it's not the things that I did, it's the things I did not do. Yeah. When I look back, it's things I had that idea or that inspiration and I didn't do it because of fear of failing or whatever it was.
Yeah.
But like,
you just have to act on it. Yeah. And sometimes you're afraid of doing it because financially it could hurt or something like that, because in this industry it's all risk a lot of the time. It is all risk. So you're like putting a financial hey, can I financially do this? Mm-hmm. Can I financially do this, take this job, because it's not going to really add to my bank account, but you need you want the experience, or you really love that story. So I feel, to me, like, yes, you should always, your worth and you ask your rate, but there's going to be those magical little projects that really speak to you. And I'm always down to take those that really resonate with me in certain ways for like less, because of what I'll gain out of that project, because it speaks to me. And the same thing, like when you're creating your short films, usually, you do get small investments from people, right? But you're putting a lot of your hours and time because you're not getting paid really on those projects. So again, it's taking the risk and putting yourself out there and just making it happen. And yeah, I always get that little birdie in my head, like, oh my God, if we don't get through these pages, we're not going to make our day, and la la la. And you just have to kind of push that away, and suck it up and go for it,
Did becoming a mother change your perspective on your career?
Absolutely. Because it was no longer about just myself. It was about, how am I going to provide for my child? So for me, not trying was not an option. A lot of people are like, where did you get that drive? I've always had a drive and ambition my entire childhood. It was just something that's just, I feel like you're either born with it or you're not, or you have to train yourself to have a drive. It's not just easily there. For me, I constantly have to mold it and feed it. I have to feed my drive, because if I don't, I instantly lose it. I'd rather lay on the couch and watch Netflix, let's be real. So like every day I have to make a conscious choice to feed that version of myself so that I can reach my goals, because I am a single mom again, and I have to make money to take care of my kid. So failing and not trying has never been an option for me, because I have no fallbacks. Of course I have family, but there's no fallbacks for me. I don't have a spouse to pick me up. It's me. So having my kid changed absolutely everything, how I look at it. Even with time, I've realized how fast time goes by when you have a kid. It's like 10 years now, and he's going to be 11. And I'm like, where did that time go? Yeah. Where did it go? And so absolutely see a lot of things in a different light. I see what really matters and what does not matter. And yeah.
I love that answer. I mean, becoming a father was hugely impactful for my career. Wanting to provide for my family, and we had like a house, and my wife really wanted to be a stay-at-home mom, homemaker. Great. That means it's on me. And they're similar to you, there was no plan B. And that really lit a fire under me. So I quit my job when my wife was 7 months pregnant with our first child.
Wow.
And I was like, all right, this has to work. Like you said, failure is not an option in this realm. So I just got to get going. And that was the motivation that I needed.
We need that.
At that point in my life, I think I was 27. I needed like some sort of push, and holding my son, for the first time, like that was the push that I needed.
Yeah.
Like, all right, I can do this.
We got to do it. It's kind of like, suck it up. We got to do it, And it's like, also though, I think it's important to do things that you are passionate about. So like for me, I'm extremely passionate about telling stories. And if I wasn't passionate about telling those stories, I would not put my efforts into it. I'm a either all in or all nothing kind of person. That's with absolutely everything across the board. I don't do anything half-assed. I don't just dip a toe in and like stroll along. No, it's like, oh, you want to do it? Okay, good. We do it. And they're like, what? And half the time I don't even know how I do it, So like it just happens. So yeah, for me, it's, again, I wouldn't change a damn thing because my son has grounded me in ways that nothing else would have grounded me. I'm a better version because of him and learning how to be more selfless as well. Yeah. It's okay to be selfish, but then it's a must to be selfless as well.
Mm-hmm. I have a question that's kind of off topic, but earlier I was asking about, what would you tell, 25-year-old Emily? And one question I have surrounds like schooling and college and training. And let's say 18-year-old person comes to you and they're like, hey, I want to do what you do. And I want to go to school for it. Do you encourage? Do you think school is the route? Do you think not going to school and just getting experiences the right? Tell me like your opinion on college for creatives.
This is the topic that I'm asked about the most. It's a huge topic. I never want to tell someone what to do. I am not here to tell them school is great or school is not. What I will tell them is from experience, I feel that you learn more on the field and by doing it yourself. So if you choose to go to school because you don't have a direction of where you want to go yet, wonderful, but still make your projects. You have a group of students now that you're meeting. Make those projects on the weekend. Still write your stories. Put yourself out there. Getting jobs on the weekend and during the week, after work, after school, whatever. And work on those sets. Work your way up. But I also tell people, don't get stuck in a rut either. Because you can get sucked into a film production, and you go job to job to job to job. But you never advance anywhere because you're not making your own work and your own content. So you need to have that balance as well to make content if you are working on working productions so that you're still telling your stories and you can also showcase what you're doing because then you can get those opportunities possibly from the productions you're working on. Hey, yeah, I did do this, Like they can see what you've done and maybe you'll get an opportunity out of that. But I absolutely think if you're in school, you should be making films always. Yeah. And you should work on those working sets. And then here's the other question. For other kids or adults or any age that are whatever state you're in, you could go to Facebook and find local film pages that are constantly offering opportunities to work on their productions. So a lot I get asked, where do you find opportunities if you're just starting out and you're not in California or Atlanta or wherever? Go to your local film, community page on whatever state you're in, and chances are you'll find a production of some sort and you can just meander your way over there and get a job. But again, make your own content. Put your stories out there because that's the only way you're going to get opportunities is by creating your opportunities, first of all.
And I really love that answer. I feel like I can be more black or white. Like, oh, yep, everyone needs to go to school or everyone doesn't or everyone needs this thing or that thing. And what you're saying is like, hey, it's more personal. So take your own experiences, your personality, your characteristics, and then implement that into your plan. And you can progress in a lot of different ways. But what you're saying is like, can just whatever you do, continue to push the boundaries creatively.
Yep.
And you will find your way. Is that
fair
enough? That's
fair enough because no matter what direction you go in, you still need to be making your own projects. Because it starts with us. Yep. If we don't believe in ourselves, no one else will. And chances are no one else is really going to believe in you. So you have to motivate yourself daily and make that choice to constantly grow and adapt. And the only way to grow and adapt and mold your voice is to be constantly pushing yourself and trying new projects.
I would like you to maybe speak about the importance of, representation and diversity in filmmaking and in creative industries.
I think it's very important. Ever since one of my first short films, I've always had a very diverse cast and a very unique way of storytelling and the voices I like to portray. The school I went to, I was supposed to go to an art school for high school, but all my best friends went to a school called Lakeworth High, and it was a very diverse high school. There were shootings. My teacher got shot in the head when I was in 8th grade. I was not there. Jeez. I was not there. for the last day of school because my mom had a really weird feeling and told me to stay home. So my best friend and I stayed home and we're swimming. And the next thing we know, we see all our friends on TV and our teacher was shot in the head. And by a student that was in my band class because I was in band. So for me, I've always been in real world situations. I do much better in a very diverse environment versus something that was a private school. My mom pulled me out of a public school and put me in private for a semester. And I was like, I'd rather be with people that are shooting people and getting pregnant and doing all of that than be in a private school. I just did not do well because it was so cliquey and they wanted you to conform to whatever groups that were there. And that was not me. I was free-spirited. I bop around. I talk to everyone. I give everyone the same kind of respect. Doesn't matter who you are. And they didn't like that. And I was like, Mom, I'm not going to get pregnant. Don't worry. I am not going to shoot anyone. So like, we're going to be okay here, you know? So my mom put me back into the public school and I got so many experiences and real world just content. It was predominantly Haitian, my school, and Guatemalan and Cubans. And it was just this mixture of walks of life that I learned so much from. One of my best friends, Rose, her mom made the best food ever, like Creole food. Oof, it's so freaking good. Like I was always there for their freaking dinners on Friday night. So like I had just such a broad spectrum of different walks of life. And I've always carried it into my projects. And the most important thing too is that when I create roles, I don't try to fit someone into that role. I kind of use some of the characteristics that they already have and I'll implement them into that role. And they obviously expand on it and they make it themselves. But I never try to change somebody, you know? So I think it's important to tell authentic stories that are true to who that person is. So I had a queer couple in the meal as well. And it was 2 women. And I wanted to make sure that I really had real queer women being represented in the story, you know? And I think it's important to tell those stories from their perspective and all walks of life. Again, I never want to just put someone in there and tell them to be this way, you know? I want the authentic kind of performances, but I absolutely believe in diversity in front and behind the camera.
And I feel like surprisingly, you know, I've tried to implement a lot of diversity in terms of, you know, casting and everything. I'm always surprised at like how much pushback I actually get from that, you know? It's like, I don't want to just do the standard typical thing. I want to like go a little bit past the boundary, you know? And I'm sure you've experienced that as well. A little bit of pushback. It's just
sometimes, absolutely. One of the projects that I'm working on, it's a very white story. You know, it's a very like, it's a Twilight style book series. It's the same kind of fan base. It's about meeting your soulmate and getting superhero powers. We don't want another Bella Swan. You know, we want women that are more role models for us, you know, that aren't content, that are still searching to find themselves, that are looking for the answers, that aren't allowing things just to happen to them, but for them to navigate their own world, you know, and with eyes wide open, and they're figuring it out. So for me, when I was adapting this particular story, is that the author and I were on the same page, but for years, I've always wanted to have a very diverse cast in this role, like unique voices that don't typically get opportunities to have a role as a superhero, you know, in a worldwide best-selling book series that's a franchise. So for me, I did get a lot of pushback at first. And now it's like, people are like, oh, more diversity. But I've been doing it for 17 years, giving opportunities. And when I'm doing castings, I don't go into castings with this look and this ethnicity or anything. I just go in and people audition. And if I feel that this person really carries this kind of role and brings something special to it, I give that role to them. You know, like I'll cast them. But I always go into it with really fresh perspective. I never put description. They have, dark hair and dark eyes and, or this. I keep it completely open.
Emily, thank you so much for being on and just allowing me to kind of grill you with some questions. I have some encouragement for you. One is like, you are a role model. We were just talking about like role models, and like, I know that you're a role model, not just to the female filmmakers out there, but to everybody in the way that you approach life and the work-life balance and excellence in your craft. Like it's truly, this has been an inspiring couple hours just getting to hang out and talk. So for all you listening out there, I would just say, I hope that you feel inspired. I hope that you feel educated. Thank you so much, Emily, for being on, and I look forward to being able to chat again sometime and maybe being on set someday. I'd love to see the wolf come out on set. That would be fun. So thank you so much.
Thanks so much for having me. It was a pleasure, and anytime that wolf comes out, and she can be scary sometimes. Okay.
All right, we'll see you guys later.
Uncommon Creative, the FilmPAC podcast.